About once in a decade, we see a team pull it all together. The right pieces, the right players, the right coach at the right time to not only win now, but win in the future. They're usually led behind a generational talent, some of the great complementary pieces. And I think that might just be what we have right now with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak, and the Milwaukee Bucks.
Ty, you said it. This is probably one of the most all-around rosters we've seen in a long time. Second stars and Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton aren't guys who jump out at you, but at the same time are very respected in the league, and we know what they can do. I think that plays a part in that team-first mentality, man, and you look at how the rest of the roster is rounded out. They've got a pretty decent supporting cast, and the thing spearheading all of this, man, is how dominant Giannis has been night in and night out. I don't think we've seen him play a bad game in the last year and a half.
Facts, and you're talking about a two-time MVP right there, someone that's building his resume as one of the top 10 greatest players of all time. That's Giannis. And you talked about the other guys, and maybe they're not as big in the star power department as some other big name teams. But when you think about dynasties, teams usually aren't built like the Miami Heat were with Wade and Bosh. That's the exception, not the norm. They usually go when you draft Bird and you already have McHale, when you draft Magic and you already have Kareem.
And Coop. You know what
Exactly.
I'm saying? Get James Worthy in the draft the next year. Golden State Warriors.
Look at the Warriors. Draymond and Klay aren't the best players in the world. No one's ever called them top 10 in the league. But it's the fit. They all play defense and they fit around Steph perfectly.
Yep.
Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, they all play defense and they fit around Giannis perfectly.
Beautifully said, man. And, you got to give a big shout out to the Milwaukee Bucks front office and their coaching staff, man, because they were able to not only put this team together, but keep this team together after a championship, which is honestly half the battle, right? Because a lot of times you see teams win a championship, they sometimes don't even get the opportunity to fully compete for that second one, right? We saw with the Lakers in 2020, that was more so by their choice, but the team was absolutely dismantled. And if they had kept the same squad, I believe they would have been much more competitive than they were that season. I think the difference maker here was Drew Holiday, man. Because at the end of the day, we saw this Bucks team. They were great in the regular season. We have guys like we mentioned, Chris Middleton, who, again, like Giannis, were nobodies, right? They're able to work hard and average well over 20 points a game per season. Guys like Brook Lopez, who are experienced vets. A guy who was able to completely change his game from a back to the basket to a floor-spreading three-point shooting big. You know what I mean?
Super underrated.
It's very, very underrated, man. But I say all that to say this. They were losing in the first, second round of the playoffs every time. In those days, we believed you crowd the paint enough, Giannis is not going to be able to do what he does. But now you have that third guy who I honestly consider the second option in Drew Holiday, right? Who not only brings it on the offensive end, but basically clamps down your point guard on the defensive end, right? He was that guy who was able to make a difference for this Bucks team and kind of give Giannis a little bit of the freedom he needs to be able to do what he does night in and night out, you know?
Yeah, and it's a small market, underrated bunch. Drew Holiday has been called by other NBA stars. Kevin Durant, I remember saying it, one of the most underrated players in the league. Brook Lopez, offensive force back in New Jersey. Another one of the more underrated players in this league.
Yep.
And it's all about the growth with Milwaukee. Giannis and Chris Middleton arrived in 2013. That year, they won 15 games. That's it. Just 15 games. But since then, man, they have gotten better every single year. Chris Middleton, three-time All-Star. Who would have thought, right? Like, Chris Middleton was not even highly recruited. And you talked about Drew Holiday as your X factor. For me, it's Brook Lopez, because you talked about that 60-win season where they were tearing up the regular season. Really, no one thought they would do anything in the postseason, and they ended up right. But that happened when Brook Lopez got here.
That's
the Splash Mountain. Like, he completely revamped his game. He spent a year in LA, then came over to Milwaukee after playing his heart out for New Jersey franchise. And he's just an unsung hero for this squad.
And of course, right, we're saying all this forgetting about a 6'10 power forward who plays like a mini Wilt Chamberlain, right? None of this is possible without him. And something I got to point out to a lot of people take MVPs or what Giannis is doing lightly. The guy it was back-to-back MVPs, if I'm not mistaken, right? So he's got back-to-back MVPs, which in itself is very rare. I'm sure only a handful of guys, if even, have ever done that. But guys who we think of as top 10 all time, guys like Shaq and Kobe Bryant, right? They only have one MVP. And these guys have won 5 championships, right? So to put all that into perspective, what Giannis is doing right now is being the sole leader of this team is it's commendable, man. Like you mentioned a little bit earlier, he's building his case to be one of the greats, one of the top 10 all time.
Yeah, and we gave Giannis and the Bucks their flowers, but now it's time to say, can they join the Warriors, the Lakers, the Celtics, and become a true dynasty, right? One chip does not make you a dynastic team, and that's all they have at the moment. So for us, what do you think it's going to take for them to become a historic NBA dynasty?
I mean, if you ask me, there's only 3 real dynasties in NBA history. And that is something that you factor to one thing and one thing only. Being able to have a three-peat. Because to be able to be so dominant in the NBA that you can win 3 NBA championships in a row, that's something that some of the greats...
So the Shaq and Kobe Lakers are not a dynasty for you?
You don't think that Shaq and Kobe... They won 3?
They won 3, but they won 2, and then they lost the third, and then they won the next year.
No, they won 3 in a row, and then they lost the 4th.
Oh,
positive,
really?
Positive, 100% positive.
All right.
100% positive.
I just got to look for myself. I do believe you, though.
Yeah. No. But them, right? Naturally, the Bulls, the Celtics. And that's the thing, right? There's a couple exceptions, right? I think the Miami Heat, the LeBron James Miami Heat, they get a slide. They won 27, 28 games in a row at one point, right? The Golden State Warriors, they get a slide. You might even say, the 70 Knicks. I mean, that's 1 year, but I mean, people remember, can't even give it to them. You get what I'm trying to say? So the Houston Rockets, they won 2 championships with Hakeem, but I don't even call that a dynasty because they got lucky that MJ wasn't there. You know what I mean? So like you mentioned before, we gave them their flowers, man, but it's going to take a lot to call this Milwaukee Bucks team a dynasty. And, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, right? These are big, Brooklyn, Well, when I say, because I was referring to dynasties, right? So these are big cities. You know what I mean? Milwaukee? It doesn't quite sound right. You know what I mean? Miami, so Giannis, you got to do a lot. You got to do a lot to be able to bring this team to the level of dynasty, right? And I think if he wins 2 more championships, what's left to prove?
Yeah. 2 things. One, I like where you went there with the small market team because it goes contrary to what I feel like the NBA has kind of become in the era of player movement. Like you were saying earlier, keeping 4 or 5 of your best players for a long-term stretch. That's uncommon. Drafting well and retaining your players as a small market team. That's uncommon. And just the leadership it takes to know, okay, there are some struggles with being in Milwaukee. Yes, a lot of players are not going to come here, but we could still find and make a winner. And that's what Milwaukee management has been able to do. So there are some threats, like Brooklyn is not going anywhere. KD and Kyrie just got embarrassed. And while Kyrie might not care, KD definitely does. And he's going to come back for a vengeance. I fully believe that next year. So there are some threats that are going to keep Milwaukee from, in my opinion, three-peating or even sniffing that. But what I do think they can become, and this is not in line with your definition of a dynasty, but is I look at what Detroit did with Isaiah Thomas, right? They beat Michael Jordan's Bulls before they started winning. They beat Larry Bird's Celtics. They had some really good wins. They won 2 titles, I do believe.
And they had to knock off the Showtime Lakers to do it.
Yes. So I don't know if it's a true dynasty, but I think they're going to be a threat for a while.
Okay, I see what you're saying, and I have to go back and correct myself. The Detroit Pistons of 88, 89 definitely get a pass.
Oh, they get your exception? Okay.
I'm going to tell you why. You just said it right there. He beat all the best players in the NBA to win a championship. Literally.
Yeah.
You can't deny that, you know? And that's the funny thing about it, right? We call whoever we call the GOAT. I personally call it to be MJ, right? But MJ lost to Bird early in his career. MJ lost to Isaiah twice. You know what I'm saying? MJ never lost to Magic, right? But it's like MJ was suffering a lot of these tough losses early on in his career in the playoffs, right? Whereas same thing with Larry. Larry lost to Magic. Magic lost to Larry. Yeah, sure, they beat each other. But Isaiah, in his 2 runs to the play, like, he beat everybody.
Yeah.
Like, he did not have an easy round.
6'1" combo guard. Like, yeah, crazy.
But to be fair, though, he had some big boys backing him up. Between Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, was it
the Enforcers?
Yeah, Rick Mahorn. Like, yeah, them fools will beat you up. But yeah, we got a little bit off topic. I'm sorry I cut you off. But as you were saying, though, there's threats.
Oh, no, that was my point. Just that it's going to be tough, right? Like I said, I don't see them becoming a true dynasty. I think it's closer to what we said. If we're going to give them that exception, then yes, they're going to be a historic team. We're going to look back on this Bucks team fondly. You're going to run with them in 2K 25 years from now. But true dynasty, I don't see it.
I hear you. I think there's a lot he'd have to do to be able to get that distinction. So I'm with you. Giannis, prove us wrong. That's all you've been doing so far. So yeah, man.
Make sure y'all like, subscribe.
Hit that button down below. Put some flavor in your ear.
Peace.